Hey guys, I'm Nicole Franklin. I'm joined by Valerie Williams. We are both registered dietitians with American Oncology Network, and we want to thank you for joining us in our virtual teaching kitchen today. Valerie is going to be our moderator. So as we're cooking, if you have questions or you have a really great tip or suggestion, please write it in the chat box so we can share it with the group. We're going to go ahead and get started cooking. We're going to be cooking today with our resolutions in mind. So we often will add a resolution, but we don't always get to add extra time to do those resolutions. So we want to talk about using meal prep strategies to help us take what we already have, make it go a little bit further throughout the week. Today's recipe is going to be an egg and vegetable muffin. And at first it sounds like, what is that? So think an egg casserole, and we're going to make it just a little bit easier to pick up by putting it in a muffin tin. We're also going to add some vegetables and some fiber as well. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got three main parts to this recipe. We have bulgur, we have vegetables, and we have eggs. And we're going to talk about each of these parts of the recipe while we have some egg muffins in the oven. So the cooking in the oven is the longest part I find. So I went ahead and got started. I've got some going. We're going to pull them out hopefully about the time we've got the others assembled. So the first thing I want to talk about is bulgur. Go ahead and in that chat box, tell us if you're using bulgur. I was not familiar with it before I started cooking for this meal. And I really actually like it. It's a parboiled cracked wheat berry. That's what bulgur is. Traditionally, you see it in tabbouleh. It's quick cooking. I'm talking 10 minutes and it's done. I want to show you too what it actually looks like in terms of seeing the actual bulgur itself. And Valerie, while I'm getting it, if you want to share with us some ways that people are cooking with bulgur.
All right, Nicole. Well, I think it's probably true that many people don't cook with bulgur because the chat's a little quiet, but Heather says she uses it a lot. Doesn't tell us how, but sounds like she folds it into her regular cooking. I love a good tabbouleh, but to be honest with you, I don't make it. I usually just eat it if I'm out or if it's, on a buffet. So I think it's definitely a food that we all could learn a little bit more about.
It's a great source of fiber. A quarter of a cup of this has got, let's see here, 5 grams of fiber just in that. So there's two types. There's a golden and there's a red. So I have them both here actually. And I'm going to show you what they look like separately, and then I'm going to show you together. This is the yellow or the golden. Do you see it? It looks to me like turbinado sugar when you actually look at it. And the red, I'm going to put it in my hand here. The red, when it says red, it's not quite as red as you might think. It does have a red hint to it. And then I think when you put it side by side is when you can really tell the difference here. So take a look at that. Can you guys see it?
Yeah, we get a good
red
look
here, and this is the golden. So the interesting thing is they cook the same. I used them both. Valerie and I were joking before. I didn't really realize I had red. They taste about the same, and they both cook really quick. So it's one of our first prep tips. It takes about the same time to cook a cup of this bulgur as it does a third of a cup, which is what our recipe calls for. So this is a really easy thing. So I made some extra, and what I do is I keep it in one of these little containers, and I can have it throughout the week. I can put it with a nice grilled salmon. I could do it with rotisserie chicken, or I could use it for lunch and do like a rice bowl. So you could certainly do this. You could do our veggies on top. You could go for avocado, for some beans on top of it. It's really versatile. So again, the same amount of cooking, the same amount of time, just prepping ahead so that you have things when you have a busy weeknight. So I have this already on the stove. I want to show you guys what it looks like once it's cooked down. Can you see that?
It looks
This is
good.
this is it cooked down. What I do is 1 part bulgur to 2 parts water. So I use 1/3 of a cup. So I needed 2/3 a cup of water. I put just a little bit of oil in there, and just tiny little drops each time I boil a grain. That's just the way I make them. I did want this to cool some because when I mix the veggies and the bulgur, I don't want our cheese to melt. So that's kind of the strategy there. I'm going to move on to our vegetables now. In here, we have got our zucchini. You'll notice some peppers and some onions. And what we did is we sauteed these in the olive oil, and we're letting it cool. Again, because when I mix them together, I don't want my cheese to melt. But I want to tell you guys about how the peppers came to be. So I made this recipe the first time, made it with tomatoes, like the recipe calls for, and they were delicious. You make sure you seed that tomato. But the second time, I found myself at home without any tomatoes. And all I had were these that you put in your lunch boxes, you know? So what I did is, fun fact, 3 of these washed and seeded and chopped make about 1/3 of a cup. So again, back with that meal prep idea, we're taking what we already have and we're making it work in what we're cooking instead of having to go out and buy like brand new things. So these are a little bit less work, but you still have to just, cut them and take the seeds out. I did saute them with, whoops, I lost my mic there. I did saute them with the zucchini because I wanted to make sure that they were cooked. If you look really, really close, you will see there is a little bit of moisture in here. And that's part of what it takes when it cooks out. You don't want that moisture to be in your egg muffins because it will turn the texture a little bit gummy. So that's why we're trying to make sure we cook that out.
Nicole, I think it's a great point about being able to put in whatever vegetables you have. This is kind of more of a method than a recipe. Like whatever you have hanging around can be sauteed and put in there.
Exactly. I make an egg casserole that has spinach and a little bit of nutmeg, and I think that would also be great in here. But just make sure you're getting that moisture out so that when it cooks, it's not got too much. So now we're going to get to the fun part. We're going to start assembling. So because I'm always looking for help with cleanup, I'm going to use my pans right here to go ahead and mix it up. And I'm just going to add my veggies to my bulgur. Now, if you were to make extra sauteed veggies, keep the other half, use that other half as a side for your chicken or salmon. It could also be a really nice base for a soup. So I'm just adding it in here. And then I'm going to add to it 1/2 cup of cheese. So the cheese that I've got is goat cheese. Goat cheese has a little bit, I think, of a twang. Goat and feta are very similar, so I think either one of those would work very, very nicely. So that's what it looks like. If you can see it.
Yes.
A lot of times when you buy this, just a time saver, you can buy it already crumbled. And it's a big help. So that can certainly go on top of one of those rice bowls that we were talking about with the bulgur. Or salad, certainly.
Yeah, and feta and goat cheese, they both have good flavor, and a little can go a long way. So you get a lot of bang for your buck calorie wise, because you can taste it without adding too much. Whereas sometimes you have to add a lot of cheddar to really taste it, for instance.
That's a great point. And it's also nice, I think, to have these veggies in here because you are really lightening up that more traditional kind of a breakfast casserole. And I find that breakfast can be a hard time to figure out how to incorporate vegetables. So it's nice to have something that's prep ahead, flavorful, with vegetables.
Yeah, I think it's also a good way to get in protein because I know I struggle with protein at breakfast because I love a donut, admittedly, or some cereal, and that doesn't have any staying power. Whereas these muffins have fiber and protein to get you off on the right foot.
So just a quick update. This is where I'm at, right? So I've mixed my bulgur, my veggies, and my cheese together. Okay. Did it in the same pan so it's easy cleanup. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spoon that into my muffin tin. So I have heavily greased this muffin tin. I do not want these things to stick. One thing you could do if you want a little bit less cleanup, use liners. Use the liners. It'll help your recipe to go a little bit further, and it'll be a lot quicker in terms of cleanup. So while I'm doing this, I'm just going to kind of put some of the mix in these tins. And I want to invite you guys in that chat box, tell us about your favorite egg casseroles. Give us some ideas for ways we can take this, like Valerie was saying, that process and keep adding flavors. So I was saying one of my favorites, I have that spinach and Gruyere recipe with a little bit of nutmeg. I think that nutmeg makes all the difference. Anybody else have any fun ones to share?
They're still thinking about it, but I can get us kicked off here. I like a good quiche. I'm a little fancy and Parisian, and I find that like roasted vegetable quiches are really good, where they have like eggplant, zucchini, onions, red peppers. Are great. And I sometimes make these egg cups, and I have a picky husband. So I usually do potatoes, ham, and cheddar with some jalapenos in there in his, and green onions in mine. And I find that those make a really good weekend treat. Lisa told us that she likes turkey sausage and cheese, but she never thought of using bulgur or putting a grain in there to kind of fiber them up a little bit. So that's a new idea she learned. But turkey, sausage, and cheese sounds great and classic, and feta and spinach. So Lisa has lots of ideas.
Yeah. So that quick is really, this part is done. So I filled up about halfway up here. And now we're going to move to the egg part. I want to talk just first about eggs. They're a powerhouse in terms of protein, and they're a bargain. So a little either over or under $3 for a dozen. And you're looking at about 25 cents an egg for 6 grams of protein. So it's a good bang for your buck. Now, when you're actually going to assemble this egg, I've already cracked my eggs in here. There's a couple things I want to kind of go through with you on this. I cracked it into a container that's pourable. So when I say it's pourable, it has a spout. I don't know if you guys see it. Do you see that? Ooh, it has a spout. And that's helpful because when you go to pour in this muffin, if it doesn't have a spout, it's going to be a lot harder. We also mixed it really, really well. I probably spent maybe 5 minutes or so mixing it because I did not want any kind of separation between the egg white and the egg yolk. If it has that, when you go to pour in these muffin tins, what it does is it'll kind of like flop and it'll make a big mess all over your tin. So just mix it really, really well and put it in a container that is pourable. To this is where I added some dried parsley or oregano. You could use any kind of herb you had. So again, back to Valerie's topic that this is definitely the method, right? So if you have rosemary or it's the summertime, tomatoes are in, you've got fresh basil to add. That should be excellent. I was telling the girls beforehand, one thing I did is I got my hands on some of the Spicewalla brand. I'll show you. So this is one of the I guess the go-tos here in Asheville. in terms of spices. It's just one of those, it's a good spice, and I thought it would be really tasty in here. So I did, the one I have in the oven, has that spice in there. So feel free to kind of experiment. Valerie mentioned maybe her husband liked it a little bit spicier. Maybe she put, some cracked pepper in his, just sprinkled it over, Whereas if there's some people that have the kiddos, maybe they would just keep theirs plain. So again, what we're going to do now is we're just going to pour the eggs right over this. Okay, and you sort of do it slowly. This is the part where I think it's important to mention, don't be afraid when you're cooking to cook something that's not exactly perfect the first time. It could take you a few times to get it just right. And so that's really how you do it. The only reason I think this is going as well as it is because literally this thing is pourable. So when you squeeze it, it makes the funnel even more pronounced. And you've really just got to have those eggs super well mixed. The other thing is that depending on your muffin tin, the amount of eggs could vary. So the first time I made this, I used 8 eggs and it overflowed. So I was certain the second time when I made it, I would have just the perfect amount. And I needed about 4 more eggs for this muffin tin here. So keep you a couple extra eggs when you're doing this. What I liked and what I actually did in here is I use a ramekin. So take your ramekin, line it with either a liner or the spray, and put your extras in here. If you don't want to serve it to others, that's okay. It's that idea that you're the cook and you get to sample it first. But that's how you can do it if you wind up with any extra. But you don't want to fill it too full, just to say you've used it. So if you take a look, this one's actually a little bit low on my end. But see how these others are right at the top. And that's kind of right where you want them to be. So if you're filling them up all at the top and you wind up with extra, just pop it in that ramekin. I'm going to pop this one into the oven. And while I'm doing that, Valerie, if there's any questions?
Well, I have a question from the group. Are brown eggs healthier than white eggs? And are blue eggs even better? What color egg is the best?
That's a great question. The shell is not an indicator of the nutrition value. It's really more about the diet of the hen that laid the egg. So I would look, before I look for brown or white, organic or inorganic, I would look for fresh eggs. Make sure you, again, check the date on them. And I would just keep that in mind. Now, I think with quail eggs, those are a little bit smaller. So you would probably need more. Whereas if you had an egg that was larger, like the first time I had an extra large egg, so I needed a little bit less. So I'm going to wash my hands real quick because I just touched, the raw egg. That's always important. And I'm going to see if Valerie has any other questions.
So a question, Nicole, is if I have a picky kid who's asking me, or a picky husband, which I have, who's asking me what bulgur tastes like, how would you describe the taste of bulgur for someone who's new to it?
That is a great question. So I think of bulgur, I think it is maybe on the side of, it could have an element of nuttiness to it, but it's pretty simple. So it needs y'all. It needs a sauce. It needs the veggies on top of it with a little bit of the oil. I think it's probably going to need something there. So when you have the leftovers and you put it in that container, kind of in your mind be thinking, it's going to have some kind of a dressing on it. Because I think it will need that.
That's great. And go ahead, Nicole.
I was going to say, I forgot to tell you guys one of my tips. When I'm meal prepping during the week, onions are a hard one, right? I mean, if you prep it early, your fridge is going to smell like onions. So what I do is I prep them, go ahead and get them chopped. I put them in aluminum foil, and then I put them in a bag. So I know that's a lot of work. Like it's in a container, wrapped in aluminum foil and in a bag, but I do a lot of meal prep, including things that aren't savory. So it's a big help for me. And I just wanted to pass that along for you guys.
That smell's not getting out of there if it wanted to. And Nicole, I know we talked that the bulgur kind of has a consistency similar to couscous. So
Yeah.
if you have people that like couscous, you could probably slide some bulgur in there pretty successfully.
Absolutely. Or even quinoa. You know, I think I told y'all the very first kitchen that I made a black bean quinoa salad. So it has red peppers, black beans, some cilantro, some scallions, and a lime vinaigrette. I think you could absolutely substitute bulgur, cooked bulgur in there instead of cooked quinoa for sure. So this is, I'm bringing this over because I'm about ready to pull out my egg cups that we're already in. And this is just a kind of a standard rack, like a baking rack. I like to cool things on this because it lets the air circulate under it so that it doesn't get super soggy. So that's why I went ahead and just pulled this out. I'm gonna grab my egg cups. Let's see.
We need a drum roll here.
I know, right? I wish y'all could smell this. I think we said that last time. Is I want to figure out a way to be able to deliver all of this food down to Messino. But I'm working on it. Hopefully next time. And this is my little ramekin here. So I'm going to show you guys this because it's one of my favorite things. If y'all don't have a ramekin, it will be a big help in the kitchen. Let's see. I got to be careful because it's hot. Okay. Can you guys see this? Can you see it, Valerie?
We can, yeah.
This is
yeah.
my
Oh,
little,
even better.
Yeah, right. So sometimes you do have to take out butter knife and just kind of turn it around as you go like that. And it will generally lift up. See? It lifts up just like that.
Golden brown.
Yeah. So again, if you don't want to serve that because you want all your muffins to be even, that's totally understandable. But the chef has a little treat to try. You'll notice these are minis. These are our mini muffins, which is a little different than the bigger ones in there. And I wanted to show you this because I wanted to kind of show how easy it can be to have just grab and go. It's a versatile dish. You could have it really breakfast, lunch, or dinner. So, you know, just a traditional breakfast, you're looking for the eggs, again, fiber, the protein. You could, you know, freeze a batch, pull some out, have it as that pre-workout or after workout snack. Lunch, you could certainly have it, or even dinner, doing a breakfast for dinner. I could see it working really well with like a toasted whole grain English muffin, maybe some applesauce, something like that. So let me see if I can pull one of these guys out and show you what it looks like on a plate. Sometimes it is a little tricky when it's warm like this. Sometimes it does need just a little bit of time to kind of cool off.
I like to run the knife around the edge too before it cools off too much, just to help it not be so stuck to the pan in case it's sticking.
Yes. And I think that was, again, Susie's point. If you want to really minimize some of that cleanup, you can certainly use those liners. That can be really helpful, but this is it, y'all. So this is I could see definitely a couple of these being the starting point for a meal. You can freeze these. And again, each component of it, you can use it again throughout the week. So the bulgur, the veggies, and then the actual egg cups. So any questions, Valerie? Any feedback or anything we need to kind of make sure we share with the group?
No, I think that that we've really given them a great idea of how to have a quick and easy grab and go. Think of these as your Starbucks egg bites, but cheaper, and you can control what goes in them. So thank you so much, Nicole, for bringing us into your kitchen again, all decorated for Valentine's Day, and showing us another great recipe.
Thank y'all. Thank you guys for joining us. We really enjoyed cooking with you, and I hope you'll join us next month. Valerie's going to be talking with us on our next Dishing Up Nutrition.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Y'all do the same.